For that live report. The latest now on Hurricane Ian. That powerful storm expected to barrel towards Florida in just the next 2 days.
Right now, millions are preparing, with many in the southwestern part of the state now being ordered to evacuate their homes. Western Mass News reporter Kristen Burnell joins us live after checking up on local efforts underway to help. Kristen.
Kristen, Mary, I spoke with the Deputy Director of Emergency Disaster Services at the Massachusetts Division for the Salvation Army. She tells me crews are ready to respond in Florida and are on standby here in the Bay State. Millions of people in Florida are hunkering down for Hurricane Ian, which is expected to bring a potentially life-threatening storm surge this week.
The evacuations are in order, and they're expecting this to be potentially a devastating hurricane. I think Tampa Bay hasn't been hit since 1921, and they're particularly vulnerable to flooding.
Western Mass News spoke with Emily Mew, the Deputy Director of Emergency Services at the Massachusetts Division of the Salvation Army. She tells us Salvation Army teams in Florida are prepared, and crews in Massachusetts are on standby if they are called to help people in the Sunshine State.
We have 37 mobile trucks prepared to deploy, as well as one field kitchen that will mobilize immediately after the worst of the storm is over. Those canteen trucks can provide up to 1,500 meals a day to individuals and families who may not be able to cook or may have too much devastation around them for them to be able to access local food.
Also here in the Bay State, Eversource spokesperson Priscilla Rest tells us they are ready to respond if called on. She says in a statement in part, quote, "We haven't received any requests for mutual aid. We are monitoring the situation there, and if we do get a request, we will send available crews." Mew tells us that their southern warehouses are also on standby, stocking essential items to help those impacted by any damage caused by the storm.
They are stocking items like food, hygiene kits, cleanup kits, other major and basic necessities like baby supplies, blankets, items that people need immediately after, clothing, that they may lose when a devastating storm comes through.
As of now, meteorologists expect Hurricane Ian to peak at Category 4 strength over the Gulf of Mexico this week and then weaken before reaching Florida. Live in studio, Kristen Burnell, Western Mass News.